And we're rolling.
We're rolling. Okay.
We're rolling.
Should I start?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Hi, everyone. It's Stanley speaking to begin, although we'll share this a lot. It is October 3rd, and it happens that today is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. Shana Tova is the typical greeting, meaning a good year. It begins a period of reflection among Jewish families, people, to look back on the year that has passed. And between now and Yom Kippur, which is about 10 days from now, Jews look back on the year, what they have done well, what they have not done well, what they hope to improve on in the year to come. And according to the legend, on Yom Kippur, which is really the Day of Atonement, you atone for your sins, for what you did poorly. The Lord looks into His book and determines whether the year to come you will be alive or not, depending on your status and what you have done and what you commit to do. It's a very solemn time for Jews. It always comes around this time of year, usually a little earlier than early October. And people take it seriously. People who very often do not go to services otherwise do go during what are called the High Holy Days, which is now. There is a lot of trouble in the Middle East right now, everyone knows. And so the houses of worship for Jews are being very much protected by the police currently, in case there's any trouble brewing, which very often there is, this year particularly. So anyway, just to set us off on our recording today, I need and would like to wish everybody a Shana Tova, a good year. And over to you.
Yeah, happy Rosh Hashanah, everybody.
You know, according to the Hebrew Bible, the day begins at sundown rather than at midnight. So it is sundown to sundown. Rosh Hashanah, therefore, began at sundown last night.
And what do you do to observe Rosh Hashanah?
Well, in the past, I have gone to services many years. More recently, much less. But I certainly, in my heart, do think about it, do say my prayers, and try to be in touch with the people who I know and love and wish them well. So, and I wish myself well too, while I'm there.
Yeah, you're one of the people you know and love.
Yeah. We have an interesting topic today, everyone. The topic is resilience.
Resilience.
And that's the noun, resilience. The adjective form is resilient, E-N-T. Resilience, if you look it up in the dictionary, talks about coming back from something difficult, something disappointing, something sad, or secondarily, it means just being tough, being strong. I thought it would be an interesting subject to explore with a lot of possibilities. I can think of a few, but now I really would like to turn it over to Mickey and
Sure.
see if he has any thoughts.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me with resilience is from the perspective of being an actor. because, as you know, at least through me and through EJ, our mutual friend, it takes a lot of resilience to work in this acting industry. You experience a lot of no in this industry. I mean, it's like I have so many friends who, work in finance or do whatever, and they'll go through an interview process for their jobs, 4 or 5 rounds of interviews before they find out if they get the job or not. And every time one of them does that, they talk to me. They're like, "Oh, it's so stressful. Like, it was a really hard month. I went through 4 or 5 rounds of interviews over and over, like trying to get the job, narrowing it down from 100 applicants to just 2 to then just me, and I finally got the job, and I'm so happy now I have the job." And I obviously try to be empathetic to them when they're having that experience, but to me it's always funny because it's like your 1 month of interview processes for your jobs, your application, that's like my entire life. Because when you're an actor, it's literally just interviews every day.
Sure.
Basically, I mean, every single audition you do is an interview.
Yep.
For a job. So, for anyone who works in that industry, like in the finance industry or whatever, tech, something, they maybe do like 10 interviews in their career. And then they have a job, and then they maybe lose their job or they leave, and they do a couple more interviews, and then they get another job, and they have that job for 10 years, and then they leave. And I've done thousands of interviews. Thousands. And, you don't get the job. For every 100 interviews you do, you're doing well if you get 2 jobs.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of sort of resilience and
toughness,
self-love, toughness, to do this kind of job, because you're always told you're not good enough, you're not right for the part, you're not what we want, we don't like you, whatever, we don't want you in our project. Like, that's kind of, if you choose to interpret it that way, which you can, and many people do choose to interpret it that way, they take it personally. If they don't get the job, it's like, I'm not a good enough actor, or I'm not this, nobody wants to work with me. And most often that's not the case. You didn't get the job because you were 6 foot and they wanted someone who was 6'1", or you didn't get the job because you have brown eyes and they wanted someone with blue eyes. It's like,
and I assume you don't really, if you get a no, you don't know why you get the no.
No, they don't tell you. They don't even tell you no. You just don't hear back.
Ugh.
Most of the time you do an audition, and then you send it in to your agent. They send it off to the casting director. If you're lucky, the casting director will send yours to the director. Oftentimes they'll just parse through and send the ones they think are the best, and many times it's probably not yours. And then if the director doesn't like you, doesn't want to choose you, you just don't hear anything. You just assume you must not have gotten it because 2 weeks have gone by and you haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
So that kind of work it requires a lot of resilience.
I'll say, yeah.
Because it will break you down slowly. It'll wear you down. And a lot of people I know who were actors, wanted to be actors as a career, eventually they stop because it's just too hard and uncertain. And if you find other things that you want to do in your life, there's a thing that actors always say, is that if there's anything else that you could see yourself doing, do that. Because it's not easy to be an actor, and the only people who should really pursue it are the ones who can't see themselves, being happy doing something else. Which I don't entirely agree with that philosophy, but I understand where it comes from, and but you need to have a lot of resilience in this industry, and you need to learn other ways. And this is, I suppose, a way to to work on your resilience, to improve your resilience. You have to work on ways to be creatively fulfilled in other facets of your life. Because if you use acting as your creative outlet and you rarely get an opportunity to do it, then you're stunted and you don't have anywhere to let out your creativity. And that can make you miserable. That can make you depressed. It can make you feel stagnant. So any successful actor will tell you, and by successful I just mean is still doing it and is working enough to call themselves an actor. Any successful actor will tell you that acting is not the only place that they, find fulfillment. They have they like to run, or they like to paint, or they like to play music, or they like to do whatever it is that they do on the side,
Yes.
so they can have another way to, you know, treat themselves with a little bit of love. So that's, that's the first thought I have when it comes to resilience. Where are you thinking of
Well,
taking it?
writers share that experience to perhaps a little lesser degree because you might write something and you might send it to any number of agents who are not interested in representing you. They don't like, either they don't like you, they don't like the piece, they think it's not marketable, and so you're getting no's there also. I went through that a lot. The problem for me, aside from possibly lack of talent, is that I started too late. By the time I got around to really wanting to be a writer, I was on the sliding scale downward, not upward. And agents, quite understandably, are not interested in representing someone already in his late 60s compared to someone in his middle 20s or 30s. The future is not as good. Other than that, I can think of any number of ways to illustrate the idea of resilience. I can think, aside from my own self, I think of FDR. I think of President Roosevelt, who, well along in his life, was suddenly attacked with polio, quite unexpectedly. He was already in the middle of a career as a politician, really, governor of New York, I believe, at that point.
Wow.
And he determined that he was not quitting. The rest of his life, and there was a fair amount still to go, he managed to manage with this disability, which was severe. He would hide what do you call it? Something on his legs to help support him.
Oh, a brace?
I think so. He went often for treatments in Georgia, at Hot Springs, warm water. But he endured. He was resilient. He came back from a terrible event. I have experienced resilience, or the need for resilience, a couple of times. One time that stands very high in my memory was going away to college and wanting eagerly, sort of desperately, to join one of the two Jewish fraternities on the campus at Northwestern, and was not invited to either one. And I went through what they call Rush Week. I interviewed at both places several times. I even had one fellow, and I remember him very well, who was advocating for me, and he would go back and meet with his brothers and come back and tell me, well, sorry, the choice was not his, the choice was among his brothers. And so I did not get pledged. I did not get invited to join. And there were a day or two, I had gone all the way to Chicago, to Evanston, to go to this school. And there were a day or two when I was just on the border of going back to Texas and saying, I can't go to school there. I can't, I'm too broken. But I didn't. I stayed. I somehow had a little voice that said, "Don't go back." I was resilient at that point, and it was the right decision because I had then several years of a wonderful time, wonderful, some of the best years of my life in school with people who I knew and became good friends with. Resilience is called for sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I feel like people are often unaware at their own capacity for resilience because it's such a big word, and it has so much meaning to it. I think to a lot of people, you know, when you find someone in your life that you admire who has that quality, who is resilient and does face adversity with a sense of grace and maybe stoicism and sturdiness, doesn't blow away in the tide. You look at that quality in that person as though it's something that you could never do, and then all of a sudden something happens to you that requires the same sense of resilience that you've admired in others, and you oftentimes don't even realize that you're being resilient when you are, because there's, in most people's minds, there's just no alternative. You either face it or you die.
I think I remember for you, the first college that you went to did not work out for you.
No.
And you didn't simply fold up and go away. You decided to be resilient and look to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which was the right move.
I think that, the only, what is it, that phrase that people say, like the only way out is through. I think oftentimes people who do find themselves stagnant or depressed or broken, it's because they are trying to undo what has already been done, or like avoid the reality of a circumstance that they're in. So they go back, or they recede into a shell so nothing else bad can happen to them, as opposed to just saying, all right, well, this happened, but I have no alternative if I want to continue living than to accept it and keep going. And I would bet that most people who experience that, when they're experiencing it, would not even think to call it resilience until afterward. I think resilience is a word that we use to describe things that have already happened, or ways that we've responded to things that have already happened. Most of the time, it's just it's not even conscious. It's just like I have to do it. For example, when your brother died, I think that, to me, that's like the most incredible form of resilience that you've displayed, at least as far as I know from talking with you.
Well, one is given very little choice,
But that's what I mean. Like, to me, the fact that you continued a very long and flourishing life after that happened, that probably prior to that happening, you never could have expected how you would live without him in your life. And then all of a sudden he's not, and then you realize, well, I have to keep going. It's my life. And then you do,
And yet that experience unquestionably has affected me the rest of my life, really. Yeah. My life would have been different had he not died, of course.
Yeah.
No question.
But you can't get through unscathed, You get scars.
I think also anytime you've been going out with somebody, male or female, and kind of been in love, or at least had a big crush, and that person said, sorry, you're not the one, goodbye.
Yeah.
And then what do? You pack your bag and move on. You have to be resilient.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you have to. I've had that happen a couple of times in my life.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I call it casualties of love. You know, I don't think
Oh,
that.
that's nice.
I think that when you choose to fall in love with someone, a loud siren. Um, excuse me. I think that when you choose to fall in love with someone, you're kind of signing a contract with that person, and that contract is, you know, that I I am choosing to figure out who I am with you in my life now, in the same way that you are with me. And if what I discover through that process with you is that I need something else, that you don't quite fit into my puzzle, and I don't quite fit into yours, if that's what I discover and I choose to leave, I'm going to take my piece that I gave you back. And then that person kind of agrees to that potentiality when you start a relationship, is that it's possible that this isn't going to be what we think it is when we start it, and we're not going to know unless we try to do it. And when you leave, you know, every time I've been heartbroken, or, you know, had this person that I thought I was going to potentially spend the rest of my life with leave, I've never really felt any kind of sense of anger toward those people, because I've always sort of viewed it as like, I signed the contract. You know, I chose to take the risk and gamble on love with you, and I lost the bet, and that's okay. You know.
Mickey, you are very smart. Because I'm sure not everybody feels that way or reacts that way. I did not at times.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But it's very practical. It's very wise. Very grown up.
Equal parts responsibility, you know. I can't blame someone for not wanting to love me the way that I need them to love me. Especially if they, you know, if they don't feel like they're complete in whatever that means with me as a part of their life, then how is it a showing of love for me to keep them with me? As an income, you know, the greatest gift of love would be to say then, like, well, then if it's not me, then go find it, because you deserve it. I love you that much, you know. So do it, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of that discovery for you, however short that time may have been. And thank you for being part of the discovery for me, that I can't fill everyone's heart, you know, just by being me. But that is resilience, you know. It's a
And how? Sure.
you dive right back into the pool. I mean, there's, you know, I have one friend who was in a relationship for the last 6 years, and all of a sudden it ended out of the blue, very unexpectedly, and they have really had a hard time sort of stacking the tower of who they are after it collapsed, because they've spent 6 years being who they are with this other piece, this other brick in the wall, and then they pulled that brick out. It's like, you know, when you have this pile of apples at the grocery store, it's like in a pyramid, and then you take one from the bottom and all the apples fall.
But are you speaking of both parties, or just the one who you're close to?
I can make the assumption that it's maybe a shared feeling, but I can only really speak for the one that I'm closer to. But yeah, you know, you spend the time restacking the tower, and you don't have that piece now, and it takes a while to reconfigure everything to make sure that it'll stand again.
Does that person demonstrate resilience?
Yeah, I mean, I think oftentimes resilience is conflated with, like, stoicism. And I know I used that word before, but I mean it differently right now. Wherein, you know, to be resilient doesn't mean to be able to handle it on your own, and it doesn't mean to not be weak. It doesn't mean to not ask for help, and it doesn't mean to not be, entrust your vulnerability with the people that you love. It also means that you need to lean into the love that you do have, especially when it's heartbreak, because there's, you know, different flavors of love, and one might be romantic, but then platonic love that you're surrounded with all the time, like that, at least for a time, can fill the hole and help it heal. And some people won't even talk about the pain that they're in, because if they talk about it, it makes it real, or They don't want to show weakness to the other people that are in their life because maybe they're a representation of strength in some people's lives and they don't want to see them weak. But I think that sometimes that's not the best way to go about it.
We are going to very soon, within a month, face national and some local elections, and there are going to be winners and there are going to be losers.
Yeah.
And the losers, and there will be as many losers as winners, will certainly need to draw on resilience to fight back.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that may be very hard, particularly, if I may be specific, this form of government that we have with electoral, thank you, college, where people will have a greater number of actual votes than electoral votes, and yet will lose the election. And that has happened more than once.
Yeah.
It must be terrible to think, but that many people wanted me to be whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not winning because the way we've got this set up, and by the way, that is challenged all the time, whether the Electoral College is really still doing what it was set up to do.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about that again
Yeah.
in the next couple of weeks,
Interesting.
because we will still have time before the election, which is November 5th.
Yeah.
Just a month from now.
It's a scary time for the country, but
Oh, yeah.
we're publicly, I think we are certainly very divided. I think that in some regards, I think that we are less divided than it looks. I think the media,
I believe you're right.
everything, the internet, it makes it seem a lot worse than it is.
I
But
believe you're right.
90% of people are not posting online about how they feel about these things.
Yeah.
The only people that are the extremes on both ends,
Yep.
and-
Yep.
But it's going to be difficult, But we're America. We're Americans, and we're going to do it as Americans, I hope.
You bet. You bet.
We are just about at time.
Okay,
You have
once
anything
more,
else to say about resilience?
I wish Rosh Hashanah, I wish a good, healthy year to all my friends, my family, who I don't see quite as much as I would like, but even so, I love them. And it's wonderful to be with you at the beginning of a new year.
Yeah, here we go. New
So
year.
we'll meet again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
See you
Bye
soon.
for now.
Bye, everybody.